Hello and very, very welcome to this webinar, Sharpen Your Digital Leadership. I'm so excited to have you join. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel a little bit fed up with webinars. By now, I actually want to go out and I want to meet people. But the thing is, no matter the situation, the new normal is something completely different. And we're going to have to learn to live with a new type of life after COVID. So what we're going to discuss today is the opportunities and the challenges and some best practices around how you can sharpen your digital leadership and really how we can make the most out of this. This is a Teams live event. And for those of you who have started using Teams and Teams meetings, some of you might even have started doing Teams live events. I can tell you that this is live, so anything can happen. You can ask questions by using the chat, but your microphone is not on and it will not be on. So you don't have to worry about that. Only the presenters and the producers that I have with me today will be heard. And I really encourage you to take this opportunity to post your questions. We will stop throughout this webinar and we will have a look. I have my colleague Linda with me here today as well, and she's going through the questions. We might not be able to answer all of them, but please post anyway because we will follow up after this webinar. This webinar is being recorded and we will share it on our website after this session. So a little bit about myself. My name is Ulrika Hedlund. I am the founder of Storyals. Before working at Storyals, I worked at Microsoft for many, many years, both in Microsoft Sweden as well as Microsoft in the Middle East. And I'm passionate about the technologies that Microsoft, bring to the modern workplace, but even more passionate about storytelling and really the value that these tools give us. But I'm not alone here today. I'm very, very honored to have a guest with me. Her name is Helena Sjöberg from Sweden. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Helena. Why don't you introduce yourself, talk about your role at Microsoft, and also the exciting adventure that you're about to embark on. Helena.
Thank you, Ulrika. I'm super happy to be with you here today. So I'm Helena Sjöberg, heading up the HR for Sweden at Microsoft. I've been there now for a little bit over 5 years. So I'm part of the Swedish leadership team, and I'm also part of the Western Europe or European HR leadership team. So I have different communities where I collaborate and work within. And as you said, I will actually soon leave Microsoft and pursue new adventures outside of Microsoft. So I will join a completely other sector, hospitality sector. On the other hand, I think all sectors need to be digitalized. So I will work in something called Pop House Entertainment Group. It's a group consisting of different companies that are very excited, like strong Swedish brands. And it's a quite young company. So I think more or less everything will be different from what I have today. So that will be a challenge. But I also think that the kind of potential I can see already within that sector, but also with that group, is a lot in regards to how we can then work more efficiently and in a more predictive way. And I think what I'm passionate about regarding HR is, of course, how HR really can bring the kind of collective value and how we can work together with the business in a much more predictive way, and with the help of course, the tech piece, the technology. And I've learned a lot on that in my 5 years at Microsoft.
And I know it's not easy leaving Microsoft. It almost, it's almost that, family that you have. But when you told me about your new job and working really with legends like Björn at ABBA, I mean, that is something amazing and a great opportunity. And like you said, I'm sure that you can bring so much more of, the learnings and everything that you have from Microsoft into that. So that's very, very exciting. Talking about, the situation that we're in, it is very difficult for a lot of organizations. Some companies might not even be able to, survive this crisis. On the other hand, I think it's extremely important that we focus on what we can do better, and how we can change and go back to kind of the new normal, and see some of these technologies, and like this, using Teams, for instance, for meetings. We might not want to do it for everything all the time, but it might be great to have, that first physical on-site meeting, and then after that you can cut down on travel and you can do more and more virtually. I know that for many organizations, COVID-19 has, led to a complete change of the way that you work, working from home, and not being able to go into the office. But Microsoft has had for a very long time, a very flexible way of working. Would you be able to share with us this work style at Microsoft, and also the move into the new offices into the city, but also how the COVID situation has impacted you?
A little bit over 9 years ago, Microsoft took the kind of bold decision in Sweden to really change into an activity-based working setup, meaning that no one had their own desks, and it was much more about the collaboration within the company and less about the kind of different segments or line of businesses. So this was something we did quite early in Sweden, and we've learned a lot throughout these 9 years. What we did, we were then based in a suburb outside Stockholm, but then in this last autumn, we took the decision to actually move into the town of Stockholm and really decrease the square meters and continue to work in a very flexible and activity-based setup. So that has been the kind of, we call it the DNI of the Microsoft Sweden. It's definitely something we've been practicing for a long time, and we do see the kind of true value of bringing much more innovation into the company by doing this. And I also think in a matrix organization, which actually Microsoft is, this will actually help to work much more cross in the company, versus if you sit in different corners and you have like the HR in that corner or finance in another corner. So at least for us in HR, but also from a business perspective, this way of working has really paid off in terms of much more collaborative work style.
I think it also is good for, recruiting talent also, right? I mean, it's more hip to be in the city center in really cool environments, rather than being stuck, in the suburbs in Akalla, where I used to work when I was with Microsoft.
It is for sure. And, I work in a centralized HR setup, meaning that I don't work with the recruitment per se. But this, of course, gives the kind of bonus effect that definitely we will be much more top on the radar for talents, and we will be more visible. And the important thing is, of course, that we want to be that kind of connecting hub for customers and partners and employees. And then just to answer the question regarding the COVID situation then for Microsoft, we have of course been impacted like everyone else, not in a very maybe direct way, but more like indirect way, since our customers and partners are hit in different ways. So what we've done as many is that we encourage everyone to work from home. That is, as I said, then maybe not a big thing for Microsoft because we've been doing that for quite a long time. But I can really see and sense, from an HR perspective, that people are so social and so extrovert at Microsoft, meaning that this has been a pain from a, fear of missing out perspective. So it has really been I would say, litmus test for looking at the kind of self-leadership in the company, as well as, of course, looking at the managers and how they can stay close, even though they cannot physically stay close.
Like you said, Microsoft, you have the technology, you have the hardware and the software, to support this type of digital work. But you also talked about, that this is, is part of the DNA of your organization, and, from a leadership perspective. Can you talk about a little bit about, the different 4 components that you see within Microsoft in terms of the style of working?
Yeah. So we would say primarily it's like based on 3 pillars, and it would be, of course, the people and the kind of culture that comes that the people will build, and then it's of course the technology and how to stand in the forefront and to use, eat our own dog food and really try out everything we have on our smorgasbord. And then of course it's also about the location, and that is how can we optimize, even though now when we moved to urban escape and really decreasing the kind of the square meters in the office, how can we still make it very flexible and very relevant, and also over time to adopt to new changes. So those 3 or 4 then components would all make make a difference. And that was something we were super focused on when we now moved into the city. How can we double click on all those pillars? And what we really spent time on was the people piece and the culture piece, in order to, as everyone, create this kind of true learning mindset. So we called it the kind of gear up habit that we all should focus on. How can I, Helena, make sure that I utilize every opportunity to gear up? Like today, for example, to be with you, that is also an opportunity for me to gear up, to think through and to listen. So just to kind of embed that kind of mindset, that has been the focus on the as part of the culture movement.
I think that is a perfect segue into then the topic, which is sharpen your digital leadership. And I love that you even have, a slogan, gear up, because this is something that, as an organization as a whole, you have to do. But the only way to do that is if you get your people all geared up and really adopting new tools and new ways of working. So I'd like to take you through a little bit of the way that I see it in terms of this. So first of all, it's really about, inspiring, getting inspiration, attending these types of webinars, getting inspiration from others. Then you need to build those digital muscles. It's one way to see someone else do something, but then you really need to get your hands dirty, like you say at Microsoft, eat your own dog food, like really, learn how to do it and see how it works in real life. When you've done that, you need to decide for yourself how you want to work. Again, there's no right or wrong. We have so many options today. You can follow up on activity planning in Planner, in To Do, in an Excel spreadsheet. There's no right or wrong, but I think we need to make a conscious decision for how do we work. And when you've decided on how we work, it's very important that you communicate that with your team. One of the challenges that we see today is that now more than ever, people are thrown into all of these different teams because it's so easy. It's digital. So you can be thrown into these virtual teams. But something that is a big, stress factor for a lot of people is that you don't really know how and what's expected of you in these different teams. How do we work? How do we communicate? What should I tune into and what should I listen to? And the information overload if you don't have a clear picture of how we do our work. And then finally, to continuously analyze and refine what you're doing. And again, going back to Microsoft, I mean, you are amazing at always, throwing out new tools. And if you like me, if you like technology, it's really fun and we try new stuff. But you will always have those that think it's fun and want to try out new things. But then you will always have, those laggards that are very stuck into what works and don't change the way that we do things. Like, why should I move to Teams? I've been using email for many years. This works fine. And you kind of have to continuously look at improving your own skills and the skills of your organization. So these kind of 5 recommendations or the 5 steps, what we're going to talk through today. And again, I'm going to stop in between and we're going to ask some questions. And here I would like to take the opportunity again to tell you as a attendee, if you have a question for me or for Helena, please post it in the chat. So let's look at the first one, which is really getting inspiration. Now, if I look into, myself, where do I get inspiration, using all of these tools? And first of all, I must say that Microsoft does an amazing job of doing all these events, and they're even called Inspire. Some of the events that you have, Inspire and Build and Ignite, you have a lot of, good webinars, and a lot of that is also available online for attendees. Going on social media, finding those, really, leaders in the field and seeing what they're sharing, you get a lot of inspiration as well. But also looking at how other people work. I remember that I had been trying out Planner. So Planner is a tool where you can create buckets of different activities. And I had tried it out, but I have to say I wasn't thrilled, so I stuck to, our OneNote and keeping our activities there. And then I went to an event and I saw one of the product managers do a demo where she showed, this is how I do it. This is how we do our weekly planning. This is where I kind of assign to everyone in the team. And when I saw her do that, I'm like, I'm going to give this a new try. And now, that's what we use within our organization. So I think looking and learning from others. So for those of you who did your little pre-assignment homework before this webinar, you will have gone through these videos where I share how I and my team use these tools in our everyday life. Now, I also say that that was just a little piece of, a little tip of the iceberg. We looked at some of the apps, and of course, especially when it comes to teams, there's a whole section on collaborating and working together in digital teams and channels. That's a whole separate chapter. But for those of you who did not have time, let me just share briefly, what we went through and how I do my work. So when it comes to kind of activity and task planning, and keeping track of all the million things that I have to do. Again, being a mother of 3 and having employees in different parts of the world, there are a lot of things that you need to keep track of. And so here I use an app called To Do, which is part of Microsoft 365, one of the Office apps, and it's available on your computer, on your mobile, and on the web. And here you start every day with a clean slate. And I love that because you have so many different task lists and so many things to do. But here you start every day with an empty page, and you can start planning your day. You can also feed in things from Planner. So if you have a team plan and if others have assigned you different topics or different tasks, you will see them all here in the assigned to you. Another thing that we went through in this video story was that sometimes things happen when you quickly need to communicate to a group of people. And the scenario in this video was that there was a big traffic accident and we had to cancel the photo shoot that we had set up. And so in the example, I create a group chat and I sent out an urgent message. Now, this is something that you can do within Teams. Now, it's not something that I would recommend that you do often, sending these urgent messages, because they notify people every 2 minutes. But it is super good to have if you really need to get hold of people urgently. Or you might think of it in a different work environment. Maybe you're working in a hospital, or it's and you need to call on a specialist. In these types of scenarios, this can be extremely useful. Again, I'm a big fan of group chats when you need timely and quick communication and you need, an answer right away. But otherwise, I really believe in using, channels instead within Teams. But this was an example of how that can be used. In the story, we continue to see how you can run online meetings. Like now we're running a Teams live event, but you can have, normal Teams meetings where you have other people that you can engage with and people can share their screens and how you can really get, good live experience. We continued going through, again, how to use or how we're using Planner. So in this picture, you can see that you can create different labels for when you want to do different things. You can assign them to different people, and you can really just pull and drag and pull these different activities to have a very good structure of your planning. Something that I have, explored a lot myself lately is something called Microsoft Whiteboard. So this is an app also available in Microsoft 365. You can download it to your different devices, and this enables you to really draw and to collaborate like a brainstorming session with colleagues and in a Teams meeting. So I often, hear from others that yes, having a Teams meeting is great, but like we really want to get out on that whiteboard and we want to start drawing. And something I would love to have, which I don't, is something called Surface Hub, where you actually have this as a very, very big screen. So that's one of the downsides of having your own company and not being at a company like Microsoft anymore, that you can't get your hands on all of these amazing, technologies. But that really is something that can really help that environment and bridge the gap between the physical and the virtual world. So here I wanted, the idea with this was just to give you as, attendees a little bit of inspiration of how, how we work. But I would like to hand it over to you, Helena, and ask, where do you get your inspiration and what does Microsoft do on a global level, but also like locally, if you look at Microsoft Sweden as any company, like anyone else, what do you do to inspire your employees?
Thank you. I would say right now, when you showcase storytell about the kind of to-do app, for example, that is something I haven't really ironed out myself. So I get that kind of, this is something I will definitely spend a couple of, part of my summer just to understand how this can make my life, both from a private but also professional standpoint, more efficient, because I'm really into that kind of structure piece and how to make sure I can tick the boxes and make sure I don't forget stuff. So that is one way for me to get inspiration. I would also say, very basic, but I bought a dog last autumn, and I think, just walking in the woods with my dog, listening to this kind of cool podcast, it could be about tech, but it could also be about something completely different. That is definitely a way where I feel that I can tick a couple of boxes at the same time, and I can get that kind of inspiration, but in a very calm and other kind of setting that the normal Microsoft Office. So that's one way of getting inspiration. And I was also thinking of something we call reversed mentorship. We've tried that at Microsoft for a couple of years now, and that means that the trainees that start at Microsoft direct from the university are being matched towards the people in the leadership team. So I have had 4 different mentors throughout the last years, and they have been so probing, so fresh in their perspectives, so challenging in terms of what they bring to the company and to the table. So that has been that has played really a huge part in terms of how I can get my inspiration and how I can just think in different ways. So I think of, just utilizing the kind of mentorships and the varieties of mentorship is something that I would really think that has really paid off, at least in Microsoft.
I think that's a brilliant way of looking at mentorship. I remember many years ago when I was with Microsoft, I had a mentor in the leadership team, but it was more kind of geared up for me as a young, employee to have someone much more experienced within the company. But this, like you said, reverse mentorship where everyone can learn from each other. I think that's an amazing thing to have within your organization. Inspiration, like we said, you need to get inspiration, you need to be inspired, but then you also need to, build your digital muscles. And here, you also need to look at different types of employees within your organization, right? You will always have those people that are hungry to learn, and like you, that, go and walk your dog and listen to podcasts to learn something new. You have others that really, they need to be spoon-fed. And sometimes, even a simple example like this one, where we asked attendees to this webinar that please, do some homework, come prepared for this webinar, and we can see the numbers. We can see how many that actually got their certificates. I know, Helena, you got yours right away. So I sent it to you and I said, please prepare, and you got your certificate. But again, you will always have people say, you know, I didn't have time. There was something else that came up, and that's reality, right? That's life. And I also say that, you know, well, everyone wants to have a great body, but like going to the gym and actually, you know, getting that exercise and getting on that treadmill, it's hard. And sometimes you need someone to really push you. You need your, you know, that personal coach that screams and yells at you to do that 10 push-ups. So if we look at building digital muscles, I think that you need to provide for the people that really want to do this themselves, but you also need to kind of force a little bit of the stick and the carrots. So looking at, you know, building digital muscles, something that, you know, when we talk to some organizations and we talk about this, that, you know, we can help you build these digital muscles. And then they say that, you know, we don't need that. Our users know how to use the tools. And then I will challenge them, because using the tools that we had, you know, a couple of years ago, maybe they do know how to use those. But how many people are really, you know how to use Sway, know how to use Forms, like you said, know how to use To Do, really know how to use, you know, Teams in an effective way. I always challenge, you know, business leaders when they say we don't need any training. We know how to use these tools. Speaking of which, I think that something that, you know, a lot of organizations are not as far ahead as Microsoft in terms of using Teams. I know many organizations are switching from Skype for Business, moving to Teams, but a very, very big change is really working in teams within Teams. And here you're really taking away, you know, the way that people communicate, right? So instead of sending an email and you put people on CC, all of a sudden you're mentioning people, and, you know, you're replying to different threads, and everyone has insights within the team into the different channels. And this is something that I really encourage everyone to put some time and efforts and investments into training your people, because you're pulling away, you know, the tools that they know and that they feel comfortable with, and all of a sudden you're giving them something, you know, completely new. At Storyals, as soon as someone joins our company, you know, we put them through our digital learning. And again, I really believe that the learning should be part of the daily tools that you use. Whenever someone joins, they have to go through our different learning topics. And again, you got, those of you who did your homework, you got to go through one of these topics. But basically, we go through like, this is what you need to know. They can, you know, play the videos directly from within Teams. We're also working on, and this is very exciting, our productivity bot, Stella. So just like, you know, Microsoft is leveraging technology, so are we. We have so much knowledge, we have so much content, but users learn in different ways. Some users want that guided path where they want everything structured. Other users just want to, you know, ask questions and have that quick kind of advice or a demo of how to do something. So this is something that I'm really excited about, that we're building, really to have that, you know, that digital productivity coach right from within Teams. I'd like to ask you again, Helena. I know that again you did your transition to using Microsoft Teams for all of your internal communication from many years ago. But can you share a little bit about the learnings about your transition to Teams? And also, is everyone at Microsoft by default a digital superstar? And, you know, how do you build those digital muscles internally?
Our transition, as you said, we did a big bang of transition. So we did, you know, we put a very systemic approach and programmatic approach when we went from Skype to Teams. And of course, we had, and you know, we were blessed in terms of working at Microsoft. But nevertheless, I think previous changes had been, you know, not as thorough in terms of the transition and the change management internally. And I mean, we just need to acknowledge we're all people. I'm not super techy at all. I'm not a digital star, but I've learned a lot in my 5 years at Microsoft. And just a quick one, because what we discussed, I think, is so important. If you can really connect the kind of why, one thing is, of course, I need to understand our tools and solutions. But if I were also to connect it to myself in a little bit of more egoistic way, this is for my own employability. This is how I can be on my toes and to really be relevant also outside of Microsoft. And I think more or less everyone understands that kind of purpose. So for us, it has been also, I mean, working at Microsoft, we would expect everyone to be both curious and to be interested, but it's also about your own learnability and how to stay, have a healthy CV and to be employable. So I think that's something we can also stress and continue to work on. But I would say that what we did then back then was that we had more of a week of Teams transition, meaning that we were just hammering the kind of different messages, features, examples. So we were doing a lot, of course, storytelling, but also story doing. So we just picked up all our, the techie savvy people in small format, but also in like big, on the bigger scenes as well, where everyone had so many opportunities with their brown box lunches and everything. I remember you couldn't even go, to the bathroom without seeing some kind of banner about Teams. So it was a little bit of a brainwash.
Teams
maybe.
toilet paper, that's a new one in COVID times.
Exactly. But it was quite effective. But then actually, I think a lessons learned is, what do we do with people coming after that kind of big bang? So in all honesty, I think we a little bit forgot about, when we onboard new people after the kind of big bang Teams transition. So we learned that a little bit the hard way, understanding that, we couldn't really keep up the pace, or we didn't have this kind of onboarding thought through at least program for people joining Microsoft. And I think the important thing to understand is that maybe back in the days, Microsoft could be a little bit more like fat and happy and everyone wanted to work at Microsoft. But of course, the competition is super fierce now, and we will actually also look and recruit people that potentially not in the past were that of interest for Microsoft. So now we look much more broadly when we recruit, meaning of course that people potentially have never worked in Teams. So we really need to be much more thorough in terms of the onboarding piece. So that has been a lesson. Because the second question there, is everyone a digital superstar? No, and they don't need to be, and they shouldn't be, but it's a collective effort, right? And I think for us, the culture we want to build is of course the kind of platform of trust, meaning that everyone can ask questions and everyone would help each other. And that's also something we, of course, from an HR and people perspective, work on a daily basis to really bring up that kind of helping culture. Because it's so needed in terms of building a learning culture.
Sometimes I hear, again, working with different types of companies, that when I said, look, you really need to put an investment into learning and to make sure that you have an onboarding program and that you help your employees. And then they said, well, it's Microsoft's role, to help us with that. And so I'd like to hear from you. Can you tell us about Microsoft and the partner, the responsibility of the partners?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if we look at the Swedish sales and marketing organization, we're like a little bit over 300 people in Sweden. And that is, relatively, it could be a big company or a smaller company, but it's we're not that many, meaning that we heavily rely on, of course, the partner community. So we have around 3,500 partners or so, which of course would be the one that are really close to the customers, that can understand and to listen in and to help out to tailor make what is really needed. So otherwise we would never ever be able to empower people, which is our vision and mission. So the importance for us is, of course, to work in that kind of close partnership with partners and customers. And that was also the kind of purpose of moving into the city, so we could really be a relevant community and work as this hub.
Thank you so much. I think there's so much that we can talk about. So I need to push forward here for us to be able to go through this. So we've looked at building your digital muscles, and like you say, everyone does not have to be a digital superstar. But if you have those leaders that can really kind of lift others and show best practices and share those stories that you do internally. Another thing that I think is extremely important is that people need to understand that they define their own way of working. Like I said, there's no right or wrong. Some ways might be a little bit better and more effective, but it's extremely important that you define your own way of working. So it's okay to say that, look, I use email. If you want a response from me, you have to send me an email. If you're and it's okay to say, look, I'm only going to I only answer in channels. Something that we did our transition to fully using Teams about 2 years ago as well. We were quite early, and I kind of said to employees that started, I said, look, I do not respond to email. If you send me an email, I'll respond back to you in Teams, because it's driving that change and driving that culture. So really you need to define your own way of working. Here's just a snapshot of a very messy team structure. When we started using Teams, you couldn't create private channels, and so we kind of created different teams, and also I wish that I could move things around, but as of now also you don't have really that flexibility. And that's something that I tell customers now, that if you get to start from scratch, if you get to build your teams today, think it through. It's like building a house, be that architect. Think through what channels you want. Think through who's going to be in this house and what you're going to work on. Of course, you can change, and you have to have that flexibility, but it's always, it's important to think through, before you start. The other thing is, okay, define how you want to work. For instance, I have one-to-one meetings with one in the leadership team. And so we just use a weekly, OneNote where we have all our meetings, and we keep our, activities here. For our weekly social media planning that we do with Linda, our communications manager, and the rest of the social media team, we have a template in OneNote. And, again, being that tech, person, I was like, okay, let's move all of this into Planner. Let's create buckets for each social media. And Linda, our communications manager, said, but why? What improvement will that do? And I'm like, oh, you're right. Okay, let's keep this as is. It's working absolutely fine, and let's keep that. We'll define that. But then I got my way, and then when we look at kind of company-wide things that we're doing, like this webinar, then we have a really good way of using Planner and different buckets for doing that. So it's like you need to just define the way that you work. So Helena, you've already shared about working at Microsoft, but I'd like to know, can you tell me a little bit more about, you talked about the leadership team and how you use Teams, and can you tell us a little bit more about the day-to-day usage of the apps in Microsoft?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, since I will leave, I can tell everything, right? No, just kidding.
Be honest
No,
now.
but yeah, so we have a cadence of leadership meetings bi-weekly, meaning that we sit down with the Swedish leadership team meeting. And I mean, sometimes it's just over Teams. And of course, the last couple of months, it has been only through Teams. But otherwise, usually it's, a couple of people are joining over Teams, or a couple of people are joining in the room. But, we've been really looking through what kind of structure do we want to have, what kind of house rules. I know that was also part of the pre-read or pre-look that I got the opportunity to look at. And I think that is so important because it sets the kind of right expectation. And it's this team effort, because if this group, the Swedish leadership team, should be very efficient, we need, of course, to adhere more or less to the same kind of rules, and they can, of course, change over time. But we've done a little bit of a homework the last couple of months in regards to what is the kind of setup, how can we make sure that we update in the right kind of channel. So we've done a little bit of scrubbing and reorganizing in order to have it more clear, where would the kind of decision, the pre-reads for the decisions we should take in the leadership team meeting, what time should that be sent out? Where should we store the notes? How can we make sure to evaluate if it's shorter conversations? And we actually utilize this kind of meet now function also throughout the kind of early stages of the crisis, where we really immediately needed to gather the leadership team. So in different ways, we are also, trying to get our arms around how we can work in the most efficient way. And what I really like about this is that even though it's, the Swedish leadership team, it's quite, without prestige. So it's more about, oh, I didn't know about that, and how would that work? And then everyone is like contributing in terms of how we can utilize teams and our collaboration in an even smarter way.
Something you said earlier when we had this the Swedish webinar is that it's really a joint effort and leave no one behind. And I love when you said that, because it's really, I mean, if you all start using something, then it really is, it really is that, you need to get everyone on board, and that it's a safe zone. It's okay to make mistakes. And that's also something that we try to do with customers. We set up, a team where they can try out anything, right? It's not their daily work. It really is like a playground where they can try out new things and just test it out. So I think that's another learning as well, to don't have a very open mindset, don't judge, but also provide that that place where people can play around. Yeah. Let's go into the next part, which really is about communicating. So the next part is really, okay, so we've defined how we work, whether we use, like we said, we use Meet Now, or we use a channel, or we use OneNote or Planner. Once we've agreed as a team, it really is important to communicate that so that people know what to expect. Something that I also said is very important is that your employees or your team members shouldn't have to go look in 10 different places. Is it in an email? Is it in WhatsApp? Is it in a text message? No, like they need to know, like if it's something that you need to know, you can find it here, within Teams. Or, if there's an action that we expect of you to do, then you can find it here. So really about, communicating the way that we work. So again, we talk about a lot about, Teams house rules. And again, it sounds a bit strict when you talk about rules. I don't really like that, but it's more kind of like guidance or agreements. Like we agree that we will use Teams, for our communication, and also we agree that we will not use, closed chat groups for things that are important for everyone in the team. We keep those to channels. Be active, be engaged. Give that thumbs up. But we also talk about what does the thumbs up mean, because that can lead to some confusion sometimes. So what does a thumbs up mean? Let's put it in the house rules so that there's no issue. It was quite funny because we had a new employee, Hadid, 22 years old. Before she came, no one had been using the heart expression or emoji very much, but when she came, she was just spreading hearts all around, and now everyone feels fine. But it kind of takes that also, someone to lead the way and start communicating in that way. Something that I also recommend highly is that not just your team, but each and every channel, have a description. What is this channel to be used for? Again, we have a general channel, and here we post things that are, to importance of everyone. I do weekly updates. Linda does, important webinars or important customer, that's something that relates to everyone. But then we have a social channel where anyone can just post anything. So I recommend that, for each of these, channels, you can have a little bit, about this. What is this channel to be used for? Here I'm using a wiki. You saw for the house rules, I was using a Word document. Doesn't matter what you use. It's about having that, information so that when people come, they know how to communicate. This the house Teams rules, that Word document that I'm showing here, it's also available as a blog or as a download. If you go to our website, we have a blog there where you can look at your house rules, and you can download that as a template, and you can create your own house rules. So it's a good activity to have with your team when you start a new team, to say, okay, let's agree on some things. Moving on to the final part on this, the 5-step journey to sharpen your digital leadership is really to refine. And again, working with Microsoft here, we're constantly given new tools and new ways of doing things. I just wanted to bring up a few examples. First of all, something that has been announced that is soon being launched is something called Teams templates. And why I think this is great is that because then when you create a team, you can pick a template that has like pre-configured channels and even apps that you can connect with your team. Currently, when you start a new team, you would have a general channel, and then and it would be empty. But this is kind of like building your house before you have your housewarming party and before you let everyone in. So here you can, define those templates. It's not available yet, but coming. Another thing that I'm excited about is the Microsoft lists. So this is like, you already have SharePoint lists and you can do a lot of things with SharePoint lists, but with the Microsoft lists, this will really take it to the next level, working with conditional formatting, with images. And so here you can really track different types of, again, different types of issue lists or products. And of course, you can link it directly into Teams. Something that is coming that would have been amazing for this webinar is improvements to doing these Teams live events. So I don't know if you've noticed as viewers, but our producer is flipping between me and Helena, but we can't be on the screen at the same time. This is something also that is coming to create more of these virtual stages and to produce really high quality, virtual events. So I'm going to ask you one more question, but before that, I'm going to open it up. I can see that both Midhun and Linda are answering questions like crazy here. So do you have something here that you think would be a good one? How do we communicate the need to mature our Office 365 skills to our IT team who may not see the accumulation of a small use of inefficiency? Oh, what a brilliant, brilliant question. And I think I will take this because this is something that I see all the time. And again, as a Microsoft partner, let me actually switch and not share my screen anymore. As a Microsoft partner, we deal a lot with IT departments, and IT departments are quick and savvy, and they think that everything's fine. there's nothing needed. If end users don't know how to use it, it's their fault. So I think what needs to happen is that this is not just an IT question. Like Helena and I have been talking about, this is the entire organization. This is something for your leadership team. This is something for you to take, control of and take responsibility for, that your digital tools and your digital learning, that's part of your DNA as a company. And it's part of building that culture, of learning and using these tools. And again, it's not just about, understanding how to use, the functions and the features. It's really to put it into a context. And this is also where Helena and I talk a lot about, storytelling. Show a context of how you can work smarter. And then also, we as Storyals, we can share, generic stories of how these tools can be used. But it will always be the people in your own organization that tell the best stories, that really impact. And this is also something, that we talk to our customers about. Like when you get, the CFO, and if he's, an elderly gentleman talking about how he's using OneNote and how he's taking, handwritten notes, and he shares that with the organization. I mean, that has real impact. Or I know we had another story in one of the other accounts or customers, and he lost his computer on the train. And he was just fascinated how he could just get new hardware, and all of a sudden, since he had everything in the cloud, all of his documents and all of the apps, he didn't, I mean, he lost the hardware, but he was up and running and he had everything, so he could get going right away. And then, everyone was like, oh, we need to start working with cloud-based documents and OneDrive and SharePoint and all these things. So it's always the stories that you have within your own organization. But going back to this kind of constant change, Helena, what is the challenge that you see as an HR lead?
Yeah. So I would say maybe I'm a little bit party pooper here, but I think the kind of opportunity and the kind of being more intentional with how to create the focus time, because everyone wants to learn, and I can see at Microsoft everyone is super passionate, but it also needs to be sustainable. So what we've been working on and would continue to work on is, of course, how can you really make sure that you put aside that kind of hours that you don't think you have in terms of the calendar, but also, of course, as we also discussed, not everything is about go on a training. It's also about learning on the job, right? So it's connecting the dots in terms of my own learning strategy, but also my own kind of focus strategy. And I think that the latter part is definitely the challenge that not just Microsoft stands in front of, but it's something with and I would also echo the kind of story or the good examples that really showcases that you take time off and you do something else. You go back, horse riding Thursday evenings in terms of just rebooting your brain is something for me, for example. That's my resilience strategy. And I think everyone just needs to get that kind of probing question and also take responsibility for putting that into action, because otherwise we will never be able to learn even faster and more if we don't also can sort of balance it with that kind of focus time.
And this also is so important when we talk about, taking charge of your own time, your own focus time and your own work time. And like you said, when you start using Teams, unless you really know how to configure all of the notifications and the same, like you get pop-ups, you get, there's no productivity at all because you're just interrupted all the time. So you need to learn how to switch off and how to really focus. And you also need to take responsibility for shutting off completely. And this is, I remember we were working with a customer and he said, in Outlook, I can write my email and I can send them, but I can put a delay send so that they're not sent until early in the morning, which is better because I don't want people to know that I don't want to send email late at night. Is that coming to Teams? And I said, no, I think it won't, because it's just a different way of working now. Like people have their own hours, they have their own work styles. Like me, for instance, I work during the day and then, I put the kids to bed or I take our daughter to speech therapy. And then, I want to work again at night and work with the US, but that's my choice. I want others to have completely different choices, but it's all about that, taking that responsibility for how you, take charge of your life. So that's also, I think, as an organization, you need to kind of train people that you need to take charge. Don't be a slave to the technology. But it's hard because also, creatures, we take up that phone. And I think the challenge is also when you mix your personal life with your work life and you have it all in one. You take up your camera to take a picture, and then, you see something. And so that's something we really need to work, with ourselves, not to get, stressed out and overworked. So absolutely. I'm going to end off now. We still have questions. I see that Linda and Mirna are doing a great job of answering those, and we will also follow up with them afterwards. But I wanted to go back and finish off to get to the little competition. So first of all, I see that a lot of you also have been asking questions about onboarding or putting different programs in place. And just know that as Storyals, we can help you no matter where you're located in the world. We work with organizations as small as with 50 users up to tens and tens of thousands. That's the beauty with digital, because it can really expand indefinitely big. So we have training, digital training programs and solutions. We also provide productivity coaching and digital community programs where you can have webinars and you can get employees to get one-on-one coaching. So thank you, Helena. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who attended, and have a lovely, lovely day. Goodbye.